Today's review, Macross Delta, the most controversial entry in the Macross franchise. If you're looking for your new favorite anime or you just want to see what's out there, hit the subscribe button for spoiler-free anime reviews from all eras and genres. Macross Delta is a significant series for me to review. Not only is it my 1000th completed entry on my anime list, but it's also an anime that I initially hated when it first came out. I originally hated Delta because I tried to jump from the 1982 original straight to the newest series without seeing anything in between. This review is intended for those who've already completed all previous Macross entries or those who don't mind spoilers. While I won't be spoiling Macross Delta, I can't avoid spoilers for the previous anime in the franchise considering their linear continuity. If you're new to Macross, I recommend my beginner's guide to Macross, which I'll be uploading tomorrow. Macross Delta is set 8 years after Frontier when the Vajra came to an understanding with humanity and left the galaxy, just like with the protoculture. What I love so much about the original Macross is that the Zentradi and the humans stuck together, forming a cohesive society. They learned so much from each other and became mutually stronger as a result. Now we see new UN ships with Zentradi tech and Zentradi becoming pop stars. I was kinda disappointed that we didn't have the same level of resolution with protoculture or Vajra, but I guess that would have made it impossible to tell a story with any real level of risk. After all, the protoculture were basically gods and even they feared the Vajra. Delta takes Macross back to its roots of pitting one culture against another while also expanding upon their technological progression to the extent that pop stars are practically mages now. Instead of fighting all-powerful entities like the last two entries, Delta pits the new UN against the mysterious Windemarians who suffer from Star Trek alien syndrome, meaning they're basically humans except for one minor aesthetic change. Ironically, after all these years of humans using music in war, now they're actually on the receiving end as the Windemarian song transforms much of their population into mindless drones. In Macross Zero, the Mao family was a lineage of people gifted a special power by the protoculture. We also see this in Frontier with their grandchildren Cheryl. The Windemarians also have a similar bloodline and were gifted an ancient protoculture song used to subjugate its inferior creations, meaning the humans and Zentradi. I enjoy the Windemarians not only because they're the first humanoid enemies we faced in an actual series since the original, but also because their society and characters are so well developed. We learn of their culture, environment, and government, plus the growing rifts within their society. While they love their home planet and hate the new UN for committing war crimes against them, not all soldiers see war as the desired solution. Life is good on the new UN side of things, aside from when people randomly become mindless drones due to the Windemarian song. While it's certainly a threat, they have the pop group Valkyrie to sing them back to sanity. Valkyrie is basically 5 min-tier singers in a group, which is probably off-putting to many who dislike idol culture, but I see it as a natural evolution. Why have one when you can have 5, especially when music is discovered to be an energy source in Macross 7 and Macross Frontier discovered fold energy, which would enhance the power of music, making it easier to pinpoint these extraordinary singers. While Valkyrie makes sense within the Macross lore, they don't make sense within the Macross Delta narrative because they're mostly 5 additional characters who are ultimately underdeveloped. While they occupy a decent amount of screen time, only one of them is a main character. Thankfully, our main trio are much more fleshed out by comparison. Macross Delta follows Hayate, the slacker, Freya the aspiring pop star, and my favorite Mirage the pilot. Mirage was my favorite character because she's the underdog. Her grandparents are Max and Milia from the original Macross, also known as the best pilots ever. However, Mirage is incapable of that level of intuition. She might be the most technical pilot in the franchise, but following the book can get you only so far. I also loved how her spot in the love triangle wasn't equal or as ambiguous as all of the previous entries as she suffers from her unrequited love of Hayate. Hayate is a free-spirited slacker who jumps from job to job after getting fired. It's not that he's bad, as clearly illustrated by his ability to dance in dock mechs, but nothing holds his attention. On his last day on the job, he discovers the stowaway Freya in a shipping container. She chose to ship herself via freight across the galaxy to participate in the Valkyrie audition. I thought her character was interesting due to her Windemarian background. She's a looking glass into their culture, so we see they're not inherently evil, although her decisions to become a pop singer singer is genuine, both the New UN citizens and the Windermerians alike initially see her as a spy. It's an uphill battle for her to win everyone's heart through music, which would be difficult for her if not for Hayate always supporting her. For all the flack Macross Delta gets, it excels beyond its predecessors regarding romantic closure and creating a morally gray war environment. Romantic closure is pretty self-explanatory, and I can't expand upon that without getting into spoilers. However, I will say that while it's not the best romance in anime, or Macross for that matter, nevertheless I enjoyed watching it for the characters' journey of personal development. They grow together as friends and lovers and become more confident and supportive of each other. Delta created the most realistic war atmosphere the franchise has seen so far in terms of gray morality. One side attacks another over war crimes, and those who didn't commit the crime are stuck on the front lines trying to survive and protect their friends and family. While the Zentradi remain my favorite race, we don't really learn much of their life apart from the human culture they've adapted to. On the other hand, the Windermerians offered a welcome change of pace, especially considering the last two major enemies were nearly godlike entities. We finally have enemies who are balanced and share the human condition. I know this differs from the Macross formula, but I think their only choice at this point was to scale things back or become a super robot show. This balancing transitioned over to combat as well, as the enemies also use transforming fighter jets. This may seem a little convenient, but after all, the Valkyrie were inspired by protoculture overtech. I enjoyed the combat in Delta, and I think you will too if you enjoyed Macross Zero or Macross Plus, because most of the battles we experience are Valkyrie against Valkyrie. While the small-scale combat isn't as visceral as its previous installments due to lack of mid-dogfight environmental interactions, the large-scale space battles were just as enjoyable as those who come before it. Moving on to my negatives, Valkyrie had too much screen time for their sparse development. The group should have only been 3 members counting Freya. 2 of its members received slight development, and I found their characters to be marginally interesting, but it wasn't enough to make you care about them as characters. Eliminating the other 2 members and reworking the nature of their screen time would have allowed them to become more fleshed out and enjoyable as characters. Valkyrie was a pop group, also a part of the military, considering they sing in battle to protect their troops from the wind song. I suppose because they're in the military, the writers thought fit to make them do spy missions as well, which makes no sense. They explained this by giving them brief backstories that would make them suitable for this line of work. For example, one of them is a hacker, so she's good at opening doors. Plus, they have fold receptors which make them immune to the wind song, while regular soldiers are not. It might be a highly subjective issue, but it feels a bit fishy that their expert hacker is also their expert singer. Would the military have their head chef go on a sniping mission? I know one person can be good at 2 things, but how often is one person the best in multiple things? And when I say the best, take into account we're talking about a coalition of countless races at a point in time where you can instantaneously fold from one part of the galaxy to the other. You would assume that they would have somebody in the galaxy that's more capable of doing a spy mission other than a pop group. I know it works because of their fold receptors and the situation's urgency. Still, I think the writers could have come up with something better, especially when most of the Valkyrie members were underdeveloped. I actually liked the spy mission for other reasons, because our 3 main characters were there, and Freya was giving much needed exposition about her home planet, and I guess about herself at the same time, and I actually like that. I also don't like the path fold energy takes in Delta, but it would take 20 minutes to explain why. In short, folding went from the wormhole theory, which was plausible, to becoming a hybrid between Force midichlorians and the Mass Effect Unity ending. Delta wasn't solely responsible for this though. I think it's actually a somewhat reasonable continuation of what happened in Frontier. So Delta's getting a lot of hate for that, and the real culprit is what happened in Frontier. So if you want to blame anyone, blame that series. Folding has become so convoluted, yet at the same time it's not the main focal point, so regardless of how much I disagree with its direction, it can simply be waved away by saying don't think about it. The way I see it is, science fiction stories choose to revolve primarily around its characters or its technology. If the technology doesn't make much sense, but the characters are clearly the focal point, then it's not as big of a problem unless it's the other way around. Of course, it would be best if they were both equally fleshed out and both made sense, but we can't expect that from every science fiction story. In Macross Delta's case, the characters, romance, action, and war politics are clearly the most important aspects. Technological exposition is like the 5th most important thing, and while it does create a few plot holes, I don't think it's important enough to negate all the anime does right. Furthermore, Macross technology has always been a MacGuffin. It was just as silly in the original Macross when they were able to repair God's spaceship with oven knobs. It's just easier to hate something when you have anime J-pop idols capable of flying or singing across space directly into someone's mind. Furthermore, many dislike Delta's art style. Like many fans of retro anime, I initially blew a gasket when I first saw these characters in my Macross. However, that was 5 years ago. Since then, I quit caring so much and I've become used to it. This is just what anime looks like now. Within that context, I think its character designs were appropriately balanced to have cute and comedic moments as well as tragic, tear-jerking moments. At the end of the day, it's an aesthetic change, and while it's nowhere near my favorite character design, there's nothing technically wrong with it, and it never hindered my enjoyment of its story. Overall, I think Macross Delta is a grossly misunderstood anime. It has all the makings of a gripping and emotional story with exciting battles. It's a sci-fi, morally gray war anime that makes you care about characters on both sides of the battlefield. It's not afraid to throw in a few twists or kill off its characters either, creating intense and dramatic moments. Its romance was relatively well written and is one of the few Macross anime with a romantically conclusive ending. I give Macross Delta an 8 out of 10. It's totally worth watching for everyone who's seen every other entry in the franchise. You might be able to enjoy it with limited Macross knowledge, but I would advise against it. I should also add there's 2 Macross Delta movies. The first one is totally skippable because it's nothing but a recap movie, but the second one is actually a continuation of its story, taking the main characters and putting them in a new situation. So while the anime series of Delta has a complete ending to it, Macross Delta Movie 2 is a continuation of the series with its characters. However, we can't watch that as of yet because as of right now it's in Japanese theaters, so I'm definitely looking forward to checking that one out and reviewing it. So what did you think of Macross Delta? Like the video if you liked it. Thanks to Nia-chan and all other Patreon and YouTube monthly supporters for making these videos possible. If you'd like to support these videos, check the links in the video description. I'll see you tomorrow with my beginner's guide to Macross, and I actually mean that this time because I've got a lot of horror anime I want to review before the end of October, so I'll see you then.